In previous videos, we've talked a lot about the shorter fighter and what kind of style works for the shorter fighter. We went over Frazier, Tyson, and Henry Armstrong and some of the effective styles that they had as a shorter fighter. And today I wanted to go over the taller fighter. And I don't think anybody in history used their height and reach better than Wladimir Klitschko did. I mean, it's very debatable if anybody ever used their height and reach to their utmost more than he did. The way he did that and the way his style was, again, the foundation that I'm teaching on this channel. And the way he used that foundation is he had 4 lines of defense as a taller man. He wasn't squared off, okay? So if you're a taller guy and you're squared off, a guy can get right in on you, okay? And he can land over the top if you're standing too tall. But the way Wladimir did is he had that foot as the first line of defense, and he would point that shoulder, so he'd be able to use that. He was standing more sideways. He was using that front foot as the first line of defense, okay? The second line of defense is he would have an extended, this is what he did better than anybody. He would use an extended left hand. And in training camp, he would use a 5-pound weight and just move around, keeping that hand extended. So he would build up that shoulder and hand so he could make that arm strong enough to be able to do that throughout the fight. If you watch the footage when he fought Chris Bird, he just kept an extended, Chris Bird as a southpaw, he would just kept on keeping his right hand at bay and keeping his left hand extended. So all Bird worried about all night was the extended left hand, so he forgot about the right hand. And then Wladimir was able to catch him with right hands that were like missiles. And he stopped Chris Bird the second time they fought in the 7th round. But the 4 lines of defense, like I said, the front foot is the first line of defense. The extended hand is the second line of defense. If a guy gets past that, you can use your shoulder. So that'd be the 3rd line of defense. The 4th line of defense, Wladimir Klitschko didn't use his shoulder too much. So he used a lot of the 3 lines of defense, which was the first line of defense was that foot. Second line of defense is that extended lead arm. And then the 3rd line of defense is where he stored his right hand. He didn't store his right hand on the right-hand side of his face. He stored it right here in front of his face. And he would have the palm facing forward, like a lot of the all-time great fighters as well. Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, their palm was facing forward, okay? And the main details when he's throwing that jab is that he's closing the gap between his shoulder and his chin, and that right hand is right here as well. So he's got the extended hand, he's got the shoulder, and he's got the right hand into the shoulder. So he's got all that defense. He doesn't got to worry about the hook because he's so long and he's so tall that if you're going to throw a left hook or if you're going to throw a long left hook as a southpaw wide around, all he's got to do is pivot around it. That's all he's got to do is pivot away from it. Pivot away from it. That's all he's got to do is pivot away from it. Okay? He's not going to turn to block it or roll it. He just turns away from it. The hook's coming and he just turns away from it. So when he got with Emanuel Stewart to pay homage to the great late Emanuel Stewart, what he added to Wladimir's game was that style. And he did the same thing with Lennox Lewis. And he has the greatest, as a trainer, he has the greatest record in championship history. I think it was something like 32-2 in world championship defenses. And it was by using the 4 lines of defense. And if the guys would ever get in tight, all those big guys would do, as a taller guy and a bigger guy in the heavyweight division, those guys, they would just tie up. So you could never fault either one of those guys like Lennox Lewis and Wladimir Klitschko for doing things like people say, oh, well, they didn't never work the body, or they never fought on the inside. They didn't have to. They didn't have to. So because they used that defense and they used those 4 lines of defense, they never had to fight on the inside. They never had to go to the body because they were so long that you couldn't get to them, and they would just use the basics, the jab, the push hook, the right hand, and like I said, you could not get away from them. You could not get to them because they had too much of that height and reach, and they knew how to use it. So as a taller fighter, if you can learn that foundation of the shoulder plane as well, like we talk about on the channel, is that the shoulder plane, the right shoulder is sunk in, the left shoulder is higher. The shoulder plane is like you're fighting in an uphill trajectory. And you have that left hand extended, and you got that right hand in here. If a guy's throwing the right hand from here and you're throwing it from here, you're going to beat him to the punch every time. He's throwing one from here, he's throwing his right hand from here. You're throwing your right hand from here, he's throwing his right hand from here, you're going to beat him to the punch. That was the biggest thing that Lennox Lewis said Emanuel Stewart added to his game, was that Lennox said he used to carry his right hand on the side of his face. And Emanuel started to tell him to bring his hand in here. Don't worry about the hook. As long as you stay pointed, you stay too long, you can just pivot away from the hook, always pivot away from the hook, and you have the right hand, you're going to be able to catch punches, you'll be able to catch the jab, be able to catch the right hand as a line of defense, and you're going to beat the guy to the right hand. If you're both throwing right hands at the same time, your right hand's going to get there quicker. So those things right there, and arguably the greatest fighter that ever boxed, Sugar Ray Robinson, had that style. He had his hand come out of the capsule a little bit. It wasn't in real tight. He brought it out, not as long as Wladimir Klitschko did, but he had it out. His stance was here, and he had that palm facing forward, and his stance was just like that. I like to call it, a lot of people call it the slip slide style in history. I mean, I think it's more, when you have your hand in an extended position, it's more, you can call it like being a fencer. Larry Holmes used to do it. Larry Holmes used to use this hand and ward you off and turn you and just control you. He would just control you. He would use that lead hand as a control device, and just you couldn't get past it. I think Wladimir used all the things we're talking about even better than Larry Holmes. That's why I said, and Wladimir Klitschko had 22 title defenses. A lot of people underrate him, and him and Lennox both. I think they could have gave anybody in history trouble, if not arguably would have been able to beat them. You're always going to believe that possibly Muhammad Ali could have beat them with the athleticism and the ability, and Ali had such great skills as well. Skills were underrated. A lot of people just say it was talent, but no, Ali had great skills. But those guys right there, Lennox and Wladimir, they'd give anybody in history trouble. A lot of the guys that were shorter, like Tyson in his prime, I mean, he beat Tyson, but arguably he didn't beat Tyson in his prime. But even in Tyson's prime, Lennox would have gave him everything he wanted, and maybe it would have beat him. But that style right there, I like to call it the fencing slide or pivot style. Because, you're just like, no matter how fast the guy is, like if you watch Wladimir Klitschko when he fought David Haye had all that speed, and he thought he was going to be able to, bait Wladimir Klitschko in and be able to use his speed and catch him with a shot. But Wladimir just kept that stance. Wherever David Haye was bouncing all around the ring. Wherever he went, Wladimir just effortlessly was putting pressure on him, and effortlessly just kept that point, kept it on him, kept that point right on him. See, he always kept that point on him. He kept that left hand lead out, kept that right hand here. He had that shoulder plane, left shoulder higher. He had that lead foot, and he was pointing that shoulder, and wherever David Haye would go, he would keep that point on him. So if you're a taller guy and you're able to master that style and master what I'm teaching on this channel, and if you go back in my previous videos and watch the boxing stance and watch the foundation that I'm teaching, and you put those things together with these 4 lines of defense, you're going to have a great style. Very, very difficult to get through to your defense as well. It's going to help your offense because you're going to be in better position to land punches on the shorter guy.